Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name's Heather and I'm here with another reading vlog. This time I am specifically going to be reading books out of my typical genre comfort zone. If you've watched any of my videos or looked at any of my wrap-ups or anything, you probably have a pretty good idea of what my main genres are that I read. My top three genres are for sure fantasy, mystery thriller, and sci-fi. So those are my main comfort zone. There's a few other genres that I'll dabble in occasionally. Every once in a while I'll get a mystery thriller that is a bit more on the horror side of things. I like to read classics here and there, occasional lit fic, it's not my favorite, and then occasional nonfiction. But really my top three, my like comfort zone books are fantasy, sci-fi, mystery thriller. So I've picked a few books that are intentionally out of my comfort zone. I tried to pick some genres or structures of books that I just either have never really read or I'm just nervous that I won't like. And so that's what we're doing today. For my first book, there's one genre that is just like a hard no for me, and that's romance. And so I knew if I was gonna do this video, I needed to pick a romance because I am quite the romance hater. I'm quite the self-proclaimed not a romance reader. So I knew I needed to pick one for this video, but I wanted to pick one that I was gonna have like a fair shot at potentially liking. So I didn't go for a like modern romance book. So if anybody has any suggestions, maybe I will try one. I don't do spice, and that's been my biggest thing trying to pick a book for this video is I don't want a book with spice, and it is so hard to tell which romance books do and don't. I don't even feel like I can 100% just be like, oh, it's a YA book. So I don't know. Also, a lot of romance books take so long to get like from the library, and I didn't really want to buy a book that I was pretty confident I had a low chances of liking. So this is where I'm at. I probably could have borrowed a book from somebody, but I just wanted to find one I could get from Libby. So the one that I have picked for my romance option is The Wisteria Society of Lady Scoundrels by India Holton. This one is definitely also got like a little bit of more of a plot to it. It's a historical fiction, but I do think it is primarily a romance from what I can tell. So that's my first pick, and I will be listening to it as an audiobook. So that's what that one is. I've actually already started it. I'm like 9% in. I'm about an hour in. And so far so good. The narrator is the same, or one of two narrators in a book that I listened to really recently, Four Dead Queens. So that threw me off a little bit at the beginning. I was like, I know this voice. Where have I heard this voice before? That's what it's from. But I did like that narrator in that book, so I'm fine with it, but it did throw me off a little bit at the beginning. But basically, you're following this main character, Cecilia, who is part of this lady thieves society in Victorian England. They have flying houses, which I was not expecting. I don't know how that didn't like click. It talks about them flying around England, but I did not realize that it was going to be them flying their houses around England. So that was a surprise. Apparently this has a bit of fantasy. It's not really labeled as a fantasy on Libby, so surprised there. I don't know how well that is explained. Like it just kind of is thrown out there and you're like, wait, what? Like we're flying houses? Okay. And then there's this guy who is a pirate guy who's been hired to assassinate her. And I'm assuming because this is marketed as a romance that those two are going to fall in love. So that's where we're at. I don't really know. It's probably not the best example of a romance as far as getting out of my comfort zone, but it's much more of a romance than books that I typically read. Usually when there's books like that, I get fed up because of the romance. Like lots of times I will be reading books and I am that person that is like, the romance killed this book for me. I am a #1 hater of when the romance interrupts the plot. Like it is my #1 complaint about books. It's why I hated the Red Queen series. Okay, I didn't hate it, but like once you get to the second book, there's so many things. Like it's so annoying when they're in the middle of a fight scene and then they like stop to profess their love and you're just like, you all should have gotten killed like 4 times. Your best friend is over there bleeding to death and you're like stopping to talk about your feelings. Like, I don't know. So we'll see how that book goes for me. It feels very similar. I did try to read or listen to the, shoot, what's it called? The Veronica Speedwell series. I got through the first book, thought it was fine. And then I got a little ways into the second book and the romance was just killing the vibe for me. And I was like, where's, like, there's a mystery happening. So I'm hoping that this one has enough plot and stuff going on and it's done in a way that I don't get annoyed at the romance. So it's gonna be a test to see if I can handle it. But that's book one. The second book that I picked, I don't know if this is technically its own genre, but it's definitely a different type of format. I have never read a graphic novel. And so I thought now would be a perfect time to try to read my first graphic novel. They're very interesting to me. I think the idea, the concept of a graphic novel is something I could totally get behind. And so this is the one that I picked for my first graphic novel. This is White Sand by Brandon Sanderson. It is a part of the Cosmere. I don't know a ton about how it loops in, and I believe there might be a couple different like storylines in here. I'm not 100% positive, and I know Brandon Sanderson is currently working on a novelization of this, so like a novel version of the graphic novel, but I'm really interested to read this one. It's very cool, like graphics, printed in full color, so really excited about this one. I think that this one will be a fun one. In my mind, graphic novels should be so fast to read. I do not know if that is real. But we'll see. It took my husband a lot longer to read this one than I expected it to take him. So I don't know if that's just that he was in law school at the time or if it's that graphic novels actually take a while to read, but yeah, so that's book two. And then the last book, as we have discussed, I am very much so a plot reader. Like, that is one of the main things I read for. Characters are really important too to me, but like plot is really high up there. Sorry, there's like a hair somewhere. That's part of the reason why I love mystery thriller books, is because they are like, the plot is the main thing, right? Like, who cares if we develop the characters? We had a good plot. And that was enough. So one thing that I've always been a little hesitant of is the cozy fantasy genre. Because they're not known for being the most plot based. I feel like lots of times you read these books and it's like no plot, just vibes type of books. So they scare me a little bit, but the one that I picked for this one is been so popular, and so many people that I trust their book taste pretty much have like raved about this book, and so I feel like I need to give it a shot, and that is Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies. The covers are so good for this. Like, the vibes overall just seem so good. I feel like I read a lot of books as a kid that this kind of reminds me of, but this one also definitely has a lot of romance, so it's falling both into like the romantasy and the cozy fantasy genres, so it's just very out of my typical fantasy realm. Like, I am more on the high fantasy end of things, I guess. I'm in it for the action, I'm in it for the plot, I'm in it for the fight scenes, and that's very much so not what this is. Like, I avoid romantasy, I've been avoiding cozy fantasy, so we're gonna give it a go. I think if a book can win me over to the cozy fantasy, it will probably be Emily Wilde. So I'm gonna try this one out. I love the cover so much that I was like, it's worth it to just buy this book, because I think I could end up liking it. I don't know if it's gonna be like a 5-star, I'm a ride or die for this book, but I think I will potentially still enjoy it. So those are the books that I'm reading in this video. I'm starting with my audiobook for my romance option. This intro has been super long. I'm gonna start this video now. We'll see at what point I end up getting to these other two books and finishing it. There's probably gonna be a few videos in between. So if you've been watching like my wrap-ups and it seems confusing, that's why. But this intro has been plenty long enough, so I'm going to go and continue listening, and I will update you when I've made some progress on my first book. Hello guys, it has been a bit, but it is time for me to update this video. I have, I fear, decided to DNF the Wisteria Lady Society, whatever book, whatever the title is. I hit about halfway and I was just getting bored. Like, we just weren't making much progress. Nothing was really happening. And so I was like, I'm just gonna keep pushing through. I'm reading it for a video. I can just like keep listening while I do stuff. But then I got to about 2 hours left and it hit a sex scene, which I was not expecting at all. Like, we were having like fun Victorian England, like it's scandalous for him to see her ankles situation. And then all of a sudden out of nowhere came this like spice scene. And I was like, oh, that wasn't what I was expecting. I was already not enjoying the plot. Like, we kind of reached what felt like the end of the plot. And I was just kind of like, I don't care anymore. And that was just like my final straw. And so I only have about 2 hours left of the book, but I just have no desire to finish it. So that's where I'm at. Unfortunately, I do feel like I still am just a bit of a romance hater. I just don't love plots that are primarily written for the romance. Like, romance is a good subplot, but it's not interesting enough to hold my attention through a whole book. So I don't know. It started out fun. It started out as like just a fun, goofy pirates vibe, but it just lost my interest. So that's that book. I'm honestly kind of bummed about it. I was really hoping that that would be one that could potentially change my mind about the romance genre, but it just didn't. They just lose me. And I am sorry, but I think I'm done trying romance books. They just are not for me, and that's fine. The next book that I'm going to read is probably going to be Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies. I think that this one will be a fun one to read while we are in spring. That being said, I am currently reading some books for a different video right now, so this one's not going to be happening immediately, but I will catch you up. I'll pick back up this video when I do get around to this one. I'm currently filming a video of spring books, which this one probably would fit in that video, but I specifically wanted to save it for this one, so that's kind of where we're at. But I will update this video when I start, or when I'm like a little ways into Emily Wilde's, but for now I'm gonna go finish filming the other video first. Alrighty everybody, I have started reading Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies, so I thought I'd do a little bit of a check-in. I'm a little over halfway. I'm currently at page 190. So I've made some pretty good progress in this book, and I am actually enjoying this way more than I thought I was going to. And I feel like that just comes down to how people talk about this book online. Like, everything I've heard about this book is it's so magical and whimsical, and it's cozy fantasy, so don't, like, be prepared for there to not be a plot, and we love the romance, right? That's what everybody talks about this book. So I was a little hesitant going into it because I was like, I love a good plot. I'm not so into the romance situation. And like cozy, magical, whimsical, like that's fine. But then I started reading this book and I was like, tell me why this is basically the setting of a horror book. Like, she's on this island that is so far away from everybody. It's out in like the Arctic Circle, and the mail comes like once a week, and that's like your only contact with the mainland. People are getting like kidnapped by the fairies, and like either they freeze to death out in the middle of nowhere, or they get sent back and they're just like completely hollowed out. There's just like all these things happening like that I have to keep reminding myself, like, that's not the genre. I'm not reading a horror book. I don't need to like read too much into like, oh, that's ominous. All of the townsfolk like won't speak to her. They're like super closed off. There's like fairies leaving bloody handprints in windows and stuff like that. Like, it could totally be a horror book, but it's not. Like, it's not freaky like that. So I have to keep reminding myself, this is not a horror book, and these things are not as ominous as I keep being like, oh, that could be really good. But I think part of it too, I've been kind of into the book The Watchers recently. I read the second one, it came out not that long ago. And so I feel like this just seems a little bit reminiscent of that. And so my brain just keeps going there and being like, that's spooky, but then it's really not. So, but it is more intense than I expected it to be. Like how everyone explained it, I expected these to be like cute, fun fairies. But no, these fairies are still pretty dark. They're still pretty intense how they're being described. And there's been some near-death experiences for several characters. So, it has surprised me in that aspect, and I'm really enjoying it. I'm happy that they didn't make these just like fun, cute fairies, that there is that element of like intensity in it, and her research is actually quite, like she's risking her life regularly to do this research, so I'm really enjoying that part. Emily is quite the fun character, that's for sure, and I do really like Wendell. I think he's funny. I love the dog. There's a lot of townsfolk characters that are really fun. So overall, really enjoying the whole cast of characters that we got going. While there isn't necessarily a plot that's easy to explain, I don't feel like it's quite as, like, more things are happening than I expected there to be. Like, there's just like mini plots where she keeps going on these little mini missions to help different people with different things or to find a different fairy. And so it's hard to explain, but I don't know that I would say there isn't a plot, but you really are following her as she goes from encounter to encounter with different type of fae, and how she deals with each one. So that's that. There's definitely some things that have been kind of teed up that I'm waiting to see what happens with them, and it's keeping me on the edge of my seat a little bit. So I definitely feel like, compared to how I feel like cozy fantasy is explained by a lot of people online, there is a lot happening, and I think if you're coming from the fantasy genre, this one actually holds up quite well. I feel like this kind of seems to get put in the category of like the romanticities, and I feel like lots of times those books, the like fantasy world building part just doesn't hold up very good, but this one it does. So this one's definitely focused on the fantasy, and I really appreciate that. So I don't know, it's going well. The romance isn't really a thing at all yet, so like you can tell where it's going, you know where it's going to get eventually, but I'm happy that we are taking our time with that. And I like their dynamic right now, so I hope that doesn't change once we get into them actually being a romance. But again, overall, really enjoying it. I'm having a lot more fun than I expected to. I haven't filmed like an awful lot of me reading because I read quite a bit in bed last night, and I don't want to film my husband when he's also in bed. So I may finish this tonight. We'll see when I get home from work. It's the morning I'm about to leave, but possibility that I finish this tonight, which would be really fast because I only started it yesterday. So again, thoroughly enjoying it. I'm very pleased that I am, because I love these covers. I get what the hype is about. So I don't feel like I'm loving the same things that everybody else loves about this book, and I feel like people pitch it wrong, but nevertheless, I am quite enjoying it. So I'm gonna go finish this book, and I will check in with you when I am done. I have finished Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies, and I really enjoyed this book. So I think I've just had cozy fantasy always explained to me in a poor way. It definitely is a lot of what I love about fantasy books. I think I always just thought I would find cozy fantasy books a little bit boring, and there probably still are some out there that I wouldn't enjoy as much, but I actually thoroughly enjoyed this. I thought the romance was done really well for somebody who's not a super huge romance fan, so please advise. Is this going to be one of those books where the first book is completely closed door and then all of a sudden you get to the third book and it's just like super spicy. Because I definitely think I will continue the series, but I don't know why. It just makes me nervous when a book's really popular that it's going to, especially when it's popular for the romance, that that's where it's going to lead. So please let me know, does this stay closed door for the whole series? Because I'm really hoping it does, because I'm really enjoying it. That being said, I do feel like one thing that bugged me a little bit is that he's supposedly like so in love with her, but then she's constantly talking about like his dalliances and his conquests and like all this stuff, and you're like, isn't he supposed to be in love with her already? Like, I don't get that. Like, that feels a little unnecessary if I'm supposed to be believing that he's been in love with her this whole time. But anyways, I did find it really fun and fascinating. I liked the world. I feel like it did a good job of having some pretty high stakes things going on. Again, I feel like a lot of the fairies, they weren't like made to be too cute. They definitely kept some of their like freaky fae vibes, which was really fun. But yeah, overall, really enjoyed this book. I'm giving it 4.5 stars. I think it was a very solid book and I will definitely continue reading this at some point. I don't know that I'm gonna like go really soon into the next book, but I will definitely continue at some point. So this is my, I guess, apology letter to Cozy Fantasy for avoiding it because it sounded boring. I quite enjoyed this one. So that's my thoughts on Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies, which brings us to our final book for this video, which is White Sands, my first ever graphic novel. So this one is definitely chunky. It's a heavy book, but I'm going to work on reading this one and then I will check in with you with my thoughts at some point through this book. Time for a little bit of an update on this book. I am currently at page 143. I'm undecided on how I feel about it yet. I feel like I've read a decent amount. I'm probably like a quarter of the way through-ish of this book. I don't know, maybe a third. I can't tell. Yeah, I think it goes all the way back. So, first impressions on the graphic novel. One, I'm not a huge fan of some of the fonts they've picked for this book. It's a little bit hard to read some of them. The main one is fine for like their dialogue, but then you have all these ones that are supposed to be like the handwriting of one of the characters, and it's in this cursive font. I don't know if you're gonna be able to see that very well, but it's really difficult to read. And like I can read cursive, but this one just like, it really feels like you're trying to read someone's handwriting, which makes it difficult, especially when they have these huge pages of just information. Those ones aren't my favorite. So, not sure how I feel about that. I also feel like it is bound in a way where it's really hard. Some of the stuff gets like sucked down into the seam. And sometimes there are words that are like really close. So I don't know if it's just my copy or if I just need to be willing to like crack the spine a little more, but that definitely, it's like, it hasn't fully cut anything off, but there's some stuff that's been really close to being cut off. So overall, easeability of reading, a little bit difficult. I'm not sure how I feel about graphic novels for high fantasy like this. Like, it's just a lot, and it feels like you're just getting these random little snippets and you're not quite getting the whole story. So I don't know. I will definitely be very interested to read the novel version of this, which he's working on, because I feel like I could like that better. I'm not fully ruling out the graphic novel. I feel like I could still find this interesting. I feel like I just don't know about high fantasy graphic novels. I think something a little bit more simple would lend itself to this format better, but we'll see how I feel at the end of it. Not really in a place to be saying my final thoughts yet, but very well could change by the end of this book. But really the premise of this book, you're following, shoot, what's her name? Chris something. Let me see. I can't find it, but basically you're following this girl who she's like a duchess, and she's trying to save her kingdom from foreign invasion. And so they've heard all of these legends about these sand mages who live in this other part of the world. And so they are on this, I guess, quest to try and find the sand mages. And then you're also following Kenton, I think his name is, I don't know. And he is a sand master on this other part of the world. And they can control sand. And so things happen. They kind of run into each other, not super far. They haven't made it much further than that. So that's kind of where we're at, but I'm interested to see where it's going. I'm not sure that I'm loving it, but I feel like I can finish it hopefully by the end of the week, because I'd like to have this video up by Friday. It's currently Tuesday. So I'm going to keep reading this. I will probably check in with you when I'm done. I don't know that I'm going to have a ton more thoughts in the process of reading this, so I will check in when we're finished and we will wrap this video up. I have finished White Sand, so we can go ahead and wrap this video up. But first, my thoughts on this book. I think I'm giving it like a 3.5 stars. It was fine, but it definitely wasn't up to the level that I have come to expect from Brandon Sanderson, or just like it didn't hook me in as much as his novels do. So I'm very, very interested to see when the novel version of this comes out what I think of it. I will definitely be reading it. I think this has a lot, oh, my battery's flashing, we're back. But I think this has a lot of potential as a storyline and as a world. This very much so felt like a setup book. I think that's my biggest complaint with it, I guess, is that this just feels like you solved one of the problems, but there's so many larger societal issues, and all of the main girl's problems like don't really get solved. Like, you don't ever make it back, and her country's still under threat of attack and stuff like that. So I feel like we only solved a little bit of it, and there's just so much more to the story that needs to be told. So I don't know if the plan is to make the novels into a series, but I feel like it almost needs it because this just does not, it's not the most satisfying end. It really just feels like a setup book where you go through one plot, but you're also setting up this whole groundwork for larger issues that affect more than just this little set of characters. So that's how I felt about this one. Definitely not as like connected to the characters. As far as graphic novels go as like a genre, I feel like I could like graphic novels, but not for high fantasy. I don't feel like this story specifically lent itself well to it. I feel like I needed a lot more details. I feel like I needed it to be more in depth. But I would like to try a graphic novel that's a little bit more simple and see how I feel about it. There's one that I've had my eye on for a while. It's Garlic and the Vampire. I really want to read that one, so maybe this Halloween I will pick up that one. But definitely, if you have any other graphic novel recommendations, leave them down below. If you've got anything that you think will turn me into a graphic novel fan. I think it's a very cool art form, but I don't know that it lent itself super well to high fantasy like this. But we have finished the video now of reading books out of my comfort zone. Overall, this was a pretty good success. The first book was definitely a flop. I did not enjoy it. I'm still not like fully ruling out the possibility that I could come around to a romance book at some point, but I feel like I need one that is more personally recommended to me as something that people think I would like. So if you have any recommendations of romance books that are 100% spice free, I don't want any of that in there at all. Like, I'd be perfectly happy if it's like they don't even get together until the very end of the book. So, which I think is part of why I kind of like more of the subplot romance story, because then it gets dragged out a lot more, and I'm perfectly fine with that. So let me know if you have any recommendations. Maybe I'll try this video again. I don't know that I have a ton of other books. I really read from a lot of genres, so I feel like this video is hard for me to come up with more ideas for, because really at this point romance is the only genre that I totally avoid. So Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia Fairies was a surprising favorite for me. I definitely will be continuing the series at some point. I really enjoyed this one. And then White Sand was like, all right. So that's reading my books out of my comfort zone. If you have any suggestions for me, let me know. Let me know what your top genres are. But I'm excited to get into my next set of books. My next reading vlog coming out is going to be another Around the World in Books challenge. So be looking out for that in the future. But thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you in the next one very soon. Bye.